It's Rosh Chodesh tonight. It's Rosh Chodesh Adar, and I welcome all of you with a full heart to what I think is going to be the beginning of a happy season and a close season and a healing season. This Shabbos is Parsha Shkalim, and Parsha Shkalim is the time when I wrote about this earlier this week. They were Mashmim al Hashkalim, that on Rosh Chodesh Nisan was the renewal of the Karbanos Tzibur, the community Karbanos that were offered in the Beis Hamikdash in the temple, and they had a new season of where everybody participated by participating with whatever shkalim you were chayav to, you were supposed to do, then you were able to, it was considered as if you were participating in every korban tzibur of the entire year. So the new year, the new fiscal year, I guess we could call it, of the korban tzibur was on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And then the Beis Din made sure that there was a shliach going around to announce to everybody that they had a month in advance. I call it an advanced organizer in modern terms. So I just have a feeling in my heart that Nisan, that Adar, the month of Simcha and the month of the Geula of Purim is going to begin to awaken us and bring back, as the trees started to, the sap started to move from the roots into the trees, into the branches of the trees that will see new fruit. I feel that that is happening to us, Be'ezer Hashem, in starting in these weeks, and Emir Hashem will move us forward into an easier time with seeing the end of this Corona Parsha. So I welcome you from that position with a full heart that we should have goodness. And with that, I welcome you to a CyberSem event that we used to do before the days of Corona. We used to do in person. And now, since we have limitations as to who can go where, so we decided to move it on to Zoom. And then this way we open it up again to more people all around the world. And it's again more exciting. And I hope you enjoy tonight's evening. So CyberSem is an online seminary where we avail girls who are not going to seminary, who have come back from seminary, the opportunity as they move on to their careers or their professions, whatever they choose, to be able to continue their Torah studies at that time. And so we welcomed this program, and my friend Colette, she welcomed CyberSem into her home to host this Chodesh Tov, this Rosh Chodesh event. And now that we're back online, we are able to invite many more people than we even had when it was in her house. And tonight I want to invite and introduce to you my dear friend Chaya Glogauer. When I don't know how long it was after Chaya moved back to Toronto from I think it was her last place was in Australia. We became friends, and it was really friends at first sight. We met in Aroma, and just to share each other's things. I was sharing what I do, she was sharing what she does, but I tell you, it was a relationship at first meeting. And Chaya is spearheading for CyberSem as we move towards being able to offer an entire BA. Chaya is spearheading, and she is taking care of the entire psych program, which we will have Emir Hashem 4 courses for. And she's very excited to do that. And we're thrilled that we have her expertise to be able to make a course that is so valuable and so authentic and so real, and what's necessary for a frum girl. And even though, even though I could say all the places that she's been in, all her credentials, you know what? I think this is the best. It's my heart with her heart, and we have become dear friends. And with this, I turn over the floor to Chaya to share with you. And if you know of anybody who would be interested or who could benefit from the CyberSem course, she is instrumental in making that program blossom and being even more relevant and helpful to the young people moving into the adult world as they segue from high school to becoming adults. Chaya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javi. I don't think I've ever been welcomed so lovingly and on a Zoom thing for sure. Thank you so much. It's my honor. It really is my honor to be here. And we all have to wish Javi a mazel tov because she just became a bubby another time. I can't even say what number it is, but a lot of times, Baruch Hashem, she just became a bubby again for one of her local children. And we're just so excited for her. And I'm going to share my screen in a second with my PowerPoint. But before that, I want to dedicate, if that's okay, the shir to, first of all the girls in the world who need to keep learning, girls young and girls young at heart, that includes us, and to the Refuah Shalema of Rivka Bat Shoshana. And this week on Zion Adar is my mother's yahrzeit. So I want to dedicate this shir also to the Aliyah of my mother's neshama, Ilana Basara. So on that note, Emir Hashem, the screen will share. I can't do two things at once anymore. And we're gonna turn this into a slideshow and play it from the start. And there we go. Then, oh wow, I can see everybody and I can see my slideshow. Okay, so this is truly a Corona experience because many years ago, I'm looking up because my son's Megillah is up in the corner over here on the left. Many years ago, we bought my husband a Megillah. And from that point, even before that point, he said, I really want to learn how to learn Megillah. And you want to learn and you want to learn and you want to do it, but you never have time. Well, this year, there's no way to go to shul and be together with everybody that you want to be together for Purim. And so about 2.5 months ago, he started learning to learn Megillah. And I am the one who gets up early enough in the morning to hear him. And it started to really transform my life because there's a very big difference when you're following every single word in the Megillah to your experience of the Megillah. And so really until a week ago, to be honest, I only had 8 of these points and I thought I was going to use another 2, but Javi gave me the last one. So with no further ado, we're going to move forward and I'm going to try to leave questions till the end. So, all right. So the first one that I'm going to, for my Aussie friends, say I was gobsmacked about was, and that means like blown away, is that that's how Purim started. That fake news was a thing in Bavel, that Haman just said, these people are really bad. And the king just said, okay. And that was fine because he was in the circle of influence and that was just perfectly fine. So we have to be really careful because especially now we're being fed so much information from so many sources. And I think that one of the things that I really thought about was that if you know that the message that you're hearing has an agenda behind it that doesn't come from love and creating better things in the world, I think you can be suspect of that. And that's about all I'm going to say about fact checking. And we'll move on to, because I have to keep clicking on this. Okay. Because the last few lines on the first slide where there's circle of influence. What I mean by circle of influence is me being a psychologist. If I walk into the grocery store and there's someone having a particularly hard time with their child, there is no way, even though I want to and I think I could do something, I'm not handing them a card and saying, come see me. That's not happening. But if someone is in my circle of influence, if someone is in my family, if someone is in my caseload, then I'm not going to do it at Sobeys or the local grocery store, but I can be able to say to them something. You need to be able to look at that maybe differently. So, but circle of influence here is relevant because, as we know, Ahasuerus surrounded himself with some really strange characters. So we do have to be careful with who we surround ourselves with. But the other thing that we know from the Megillah, which I noticed, is that once Esther became installed in Haggai's, is it a harem? I don't know. All the ladies were hanging there, right? So we all need support from our friends. It touched me so deeply that Mordechai would come almost every day and check on Esther Hamalka and make sure she was okay. And it was also, I think, because of that the message, when things started going bad, that the message got out to Esther and to Mordechai so quickly. So then we move on to some of the harder ones. We look at the characters in the Megillah, and we see where ego just becomes a huge issue. And let me pause before I go on, because I realize that the last couple of slides, I've not been connecting it to COVID. We have to surround ourselves with our friends. We have to connect, even if it's just this way, even if it's the Bayit, my shul here in Toronto. We have what we call a walking group. When it's not freezing cold outside, we do walk. But even when we just connect on a Wednesday, it changes the atmosphere of my whole week. So reach out to each other, connect. The fact that two of my best friends from Australia have joined is like warming my heart to no end. And related to that is the fact that ego is not relevant. Ego is really a big challenge. And I think we all know when there's somebody who's leading from their ego. But I think that we also need to know in this day and age that confidence is not ego. And confidence, knowing that we are someone on this chat, and she knows who she is, said to me once, my birthday is the day that the world knew that it needed my unique powers. And that changed my life, because everybody has a birthday, and everybody, long time ago, if you saw any pictures, any of you, of my grandson, will see little babies know that they are just pure and connected to Hashem, and that their spirituality leads them. What happens to us? What happens to us as we go through life that our confidence gets smashed or crushed or wiped out or just like swallowed? Why cannot we have confidence? We need to go forward in this world knowing that we're not greater than anybody else, but we are great. And that's the only reason that Esther was able to go forward to the king, because she had the confidence of her soul and Hashem. And that's how the whole thing was turned over, because she wobbled. We saw she wobbled, but she relied on her strength, and she relied on the strength of the people who were supporting her. And she walked into that king's rooms, and everything changed. Okay. Don't make decisions after midnight, because we all know that it's really easy to binge watch Netflix, and it's really easy to like connect to your friends overseas, and it's really easy to make Shabbos really late on a Thursday night. Whatever it is that you're doing, exercising, it might be a really good thing. But did you notice that I think the Vashti thing happened in the middle of the night, but I know because I read it. Haman, his wife said, yeah, that's a good idea. Go and talk to the king in the morning about hanging Mordecai on the gallows. But Haman didn't listen really to his wife, and he went right there and then, and that's when everything changed. And related to the previous slide where it was ego, 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 he stood there, he couldn't read the room, he couldn't figure out that it wasn't actually all about him, and that's what was part of his downfall as well. So the other thing that happens is that our darkness descends in our personal lives, I think, at night as well. So it's really important. There's no need to make a decision after midnight. Wait until you've slept on it. Take some time. You know, that idea that if somebody sends you an email and you want to just like whip off a reply, wait 24 hours. See if it still looks the same to you after you've taken some time to look at it. I feel like I'm going quickly. That might be good. I don't know. Oh, wait. Okay. So the other thing is, especially now when we are in a pandemic, we have to see what we can do to do something nice for someone else. Another one of my very precious friends is on this chat today, and she's walking around. She can't do some things, like she can't smile at people because we all have masks on, but she's walking around giving out candies to people. And it's changing her life and it's changing their lives. And I love that. So say hi to someone, even if you're crossing to the other side of the street. Say hi to someone. Say thank you to someone if they move out of the way for you. Say thank you to someone who's going the right way in the grocery store. Say thank you to the clerk who's actually risking her life to be there. We have, and look at the fact that Mordecai's good deed was one of the things that planted the seeds that made it so that that we would be redeemed from Haman's evil decree. Let me just see if I have any other notes there. No, I'm good. Okay. I think I'm going to say it later too, but I'll say it here too. I'm also very grateful to one of my friends named Karen, because my daughter graduated last June, or this June, the Corona June, and I was, another Australianism, gutted that that her graduation was not going to be the way she expected. Really, all she wanted was her family to be there, and her father couldn't be there, and her sister and her brother-in-law couldn't be there. And I called her and I said, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I'll tell you what I'm doing, because my son's graduating from 8th grade. And she said, I've got a sign up in my front hall that says 20 days to graduation, 19 days to graduation, 18 days to graduation. And then I thought, you know what? Okay, I know what to do. And I put my mask on and I drove to Michael's, which is a craft store for the Aussies who don't know what that is. And I bought the most ridiculous things, because my Rachel, who just graduated, she's quite the, like, she put on the graduation cap and gown sunglasses exactly once, and I got a picture of her in them exactly once, but she's not the kind to wear those around. But I still have the 2020 gold blingy thing in my living room, because I ask people very often, we're going to come out of this. We are, right? Because we know that it's a Torah idea that the cure is always there before the makkah. But we don't know, but I think some of us also know that one of the makkahs that we have right now is not necessarily the coronavirus. It's what's happening to our hearts and our souls. That if we are feeling lonely or depressed or anxious or isolated, that there are solutions to that. And one of the questions that I started asking myself and other people is, when you look back on this period in your life, when you've been locked down or isolated or kept away from your family, what are you going to want to remember? Are you going to want, thank God I survived? Okay, maybe, but can you thrive? There are ways to thrive in this environment, as hard as it is, but I think it requires focusing on the teeny tiny brachas, the little things that, thank God there was toilet paper in the grocery store. I remember last Pesach, I won't say the P word more than once, there not being any chicken and meat. This year, thank God there's chicken and meat. I mean, I know it's only before Purim, but we have to be grateful for the things that we have. And I think part of it is that it's, if we can have our cure in our mind that everything is going to be okay, if we know one day at a time that everything is going to be okay, then we can trust in this moment and it's going to be okay. Because in Bavel, Mordechai had planted the seeds to make sure that everything was okay. And part of it was that the queen was installed in her place. So everything was set for everything to be okay. And we don't know what's going to make everything okay now, but we know that Hashem is in charge of this world. So therefore, it is okay, even if it doesn't feel that way. Another thing that I noticed was patience and silence. Because remember Harvana, am I saying that right? I think I am. Harvana was there at the beginning when Vashti met her fate, but Harvana was also there at the end. And he didn't say very much. But when he needed to say, hey, Haman, who's just fallen on and accosted the queen, you know, there's a gallows out there that was set up for Mordecai. All he had to do was say that, and Haman's fate was sealed. So sometimes, and that's a very big lesson for nowadays too, because I think that part of what is making life difficult in some circles is the fact that social media and the media in general does not really subscribe to the idea of silence, and we don't really pay attention to patience either, because we have to hear exactly what's going on, possibly at the moment that it's happening, but it isn't really anything that's happening that's useful or valuable. So maybe we need to take our view back into our own world, into what's happening in our own home with the people that we're close to, or if it's via Zoom because we can't be in the same physical place, but be patient with the people who are struggling and listen, because it's not about hearing our own voice reflected off of someone else. It's listening to what's in ourselves and listening to what people around us are saying, people who are going backwards to our circle of influence. Okay, so I'm catching us up on time. I looked at my notes. I really wanted to say something else. And this was from somebody on our Wednesday walking group. I've been really thinking a lot about failing to plan is like planning to fail. And I forgot about talking about Esther I'm not sure honestly when she put the plan together, but her plan involved so much patience. She went to the king. She didn't ask right away. She had a first Seder. She didn't ask right away. She had a second Seder. She waited and she gave the power to her husband, the king, to ask again, hey, what can I give you? Up to half my kingdom, my darling. What can I give you? And then that's when she dropped it. And she'd set that whole stage. So her patience and her silence all the way through there was brilliant tactical planning on her part. So I'm really trying to plan more about certain things in my life that are really challenging so that I'm not feeling failure in those places in my life. Okay, wait, I have to be back on. I admitted somebody, so I have to. Oh, there we go. Okay. We've touched on this, but it's still a little bit different. If we the words the word Hashem does not appear in the Megillah, but the sight of Hashem doesn't necessarily feel very present sometimes when we're locked in our houses and when we can't go to the gym and when we can't go to the library and when we can't see our family and we have to quarantine for 2 weeks if we do go see our family. But the whole Megillah teaches us that we are really in the hands of Hashem. Every single piece of this was perfectly orchestrated by Hashem and in such a hidden way. So one of the things that we can do when we're doing good deeds and when we're being kind and when we're working on our confidence is we can believe that Hashem believes in us. And if we can believe in ourselves as much as Hashem believes in us, because every single day that we wake up, Hashem is believing in us. And I haven't said this part, but this is actually relevant. I'm on a mission this year, besides some people have mentioned my 3 for 3 for 3 challenge, which is a breathing challenge, to do long, slow, deep breaths 3 times in a row, 3 times a day, or 3 times and then like every 3 hours in a day. But this one is even bigger. We don't think about the fact that when struggle is there, it means that we're growing. If we were exercising, we wouldn't feel like the day that we lifted an extra 5 pounds of weight, or we added 1 pound of weight, or we lifted 3 more times. Our muscles would be sore and we'd say, oh, that's sore. But we'd stretch and we'd know that the next day or a couple of days later that strength would be more. We don't teach our children. We don't necessarily focus on with ourselves that when something gets hard, when we hit a wall intellectually or emotionally or both, that's when we're literally, our brain cells are like this and this, and they have to just have more ability to connect and grow. So it's like when I failed calculus in university. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was really one of the first, very, very, very first times that something was really, 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 really hard for me, and I didn't have the support of the teachers or the students that were supposedly my friends, and I gave up. But what if I had known? What if I had known that struggle where I just couldn't see it and I couldn't understand it? What if I knew that if I tried harder and I tried again and I tried again, that would have made a difference? And so when it feels hard, it's because it's hard, but hard is our brain feeling like, oh, I don't get this. And we don't, but it doesn't mean we're not going to. It means that we have to be kind and patient to ourselves and try to keep moving forward, because we are going to get it. So in a COVID environment, we have to try, just like in the Megillah, to see the places where Hashem is. It might be in the smile of our kids. It might be that our cake didn't fall. It might be that we learned how to take a picture on our phone in a good way. It might be, I don't know what it might be, but I'm inviting you to find the places in your life where you feel that Hashem is there. And I think that we feel sometimes like we have to fight, but sometimes we can just be. And if we can just be, that gives us the ability for us to feel that Hashem is molding us and moving us forward. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the last slide, if this works. No, because I let somebody in the thing. There we go. Okay. I have to thank Javi for on our walk last week. She gave me my last thought about this, because this could have just been an incident, right? It was a happy ending. And I was thinking about it this morning when my husband was doing the laning, and I was listening. I was thinking, you know, if we do it to ourselves, when we've taught history when we learned history in university or in high school, have you ever noticed we learn history of wars? We learn history of battles. We learn history of kingdoms rising and falling. We don't pay so much attention to history of good things happening. And I think the beautiful thing about the Megillah is that the way that the Megillah was written has a feminine touch to it. And the way we observe Purim has a feminine touch to it. Because the way we observe Purim is by giving gifts to each other, having a feast where we invite people who we love. And I really think that being in the COVID environment, it's going to make us appreciate the human part of it more when we're done. That's what I'm hoping, because I think worldwide we felt pressure to make our Purim Seudah like the bomb, and we felt pressure to make the most amazing mishloach manot, and it had to be like an amazing theme, and this, and you had to top what you were doing last year. We've pressed reset on the world. We have pressed reset on those kinds of things. And if we choose to pay attention to that reset, we can reconnect to what is really important. My son works for an organization called High Lifeline, and he was really excited this week because he thought he was going to get to meet the famous chef Wolfgang Puck. And then it turned out that Wolfgang Puck trained some chefs in Toronto. And then it turned out that he was just going to meet the chefs that had been trained in Toronto. So it was like a bunch of steps removed. But then he came home with like some prime rib and some volcano cake with whipped cream that had orange flavored whipped cream, and some beautiful fish tacos. And I thought, wow, we've got dinner. I don't have to worry about dinner tonight. And he came in the house and he said, Mom, I hope you're not mad. I'm really sorry. But there was a homeless man on my drive home, and I gave him some of the food. And I was like, I didn't cry because he's 22 and I didn't want to make him, didn't want to like embarrass him too much. But that was my nachas. So that is what we need to get back to, that we are no better than anybody else, no worse than anybody else. We are all human beings. And the beautiful message of Purim, and I think why Purim has lasted the way it has, is because it's connected to the energy that is the eternal energy of the world, which is the feminine energy, which is the one that's getting more and more and more revealed as we get closer and closer to Mashiach. So my wish for everybody is that we can have an everlasting impact on the world. And again, what do you want your COVID Megillah to read as when you look back on it next year, please God, next week, please God, that we should be out of this, tomorrow we should be out of this. But whenever it is, how do you want to leave the legacy of your COVID Purim? And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I'm done. And if people want to ask me questions,
I'd like to welcome questions, Chaya. Thank you very, very, very much. You touched on really pivotal concepts that if each person, Emir Tashem, oh, someone's no working mic. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So, so many pivotal concepts that we can take. Each person will take whatever touches them. But I think the ultimate message of what do we want our COVID legacy to look like, and what can we take from the messages of the Megillah to move us forward, each person in their home, each person for their family. What can we take out of it? And we can plan, what do we want it to look like when our kids look back on us and say, Ma, you remember during COVID, blah, 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 you did this. Well, we want that to be something of life changing and of life impacting, so that we take the messages in the way that hopefully Hashem wants us to do it. So I am welcoming everybody to ask questions. If you can please type them in the chat. Chaya, our first question is, there are some people who are alone. They have few contacts and feel alone. What steps do you suggest for these people to take when others don't reach out to them?
Wow. I think that if any of us knows somebody who's alone and other people aren't reaching out to them, I think, okay, it's coming to me as I'm listening to myself, because it's the glass half full or the glass half empty. Someone knows that they're alone. So are they focusing on the people who aren't reaching out to them, or are they focusing on the people who are reaching out to them? And then the people who are reaching out to them, does that person know that they can be the change they want to see? Can they reach out to someone? I know there's lots of people who can't. I have got them in my family, right? Like, I've got to be the one who calls, or it's like, hello, and then I'm in such trouble. But I do, and I accept that that's my role. But sometimes it's what we focus on, right? Because if we focus on who isn't calling us, we're not going to be happy. But we focus on who is, we're going to be happier.
So if we know who is someone who is alone, how can we help them see their glass as being half full and half empty instead of being half empty?
I think it's related to what I said about circle of influence. If you're not in that person's circle of influence, you can become someone in that person's circle of influence if you want to be, by engaging them in conversation, finding out who the people are in their lives, finding out what they're interested in, finding out what they like to do. And then maybe you connect to some of those people for them, and you become the angel or the elf who says, do you know that so-and-so is feeling a little bit lonely? Could you do something? And that's part of it. And maybe while you're talking to them, you model for them, if they are good at listening. Sometimes people just are not movable in their loneliness, and I think you just have to call them and say, hi, just thinking of you, and they might fetch and they might complain, and that's okay. Because maybe even if you just call and just say hi and good Shabbos, and they fetch and complain, then you can say, okay, I'll talk to you next week. And then you've done your piece. And our job is not to change the world. Our job is just to do our part.
And to be confident that I've done my best.
Yes.
I think that's a big piece for all of us, even though we try and do good, and we may fall short of the success or the impact that we hope to have. I think your message of to know that you've done your best and the results of what you do are not in your hands, then you can feel positive about continuing the process. Otherwise, I think if someone didn't respond to me, then I'm not going to call them again. But the key to our own perseverance is the knowledge that I've done my best, even if I think that I wasn't impactful. But I think thank you.
And I think it's also related to the idea that you have to think about whether or not you're a farmer or you're, I don't know what the opposite is, but if you think of yourself as planting seeds, then you're never going to be disappointed in your day. If you plant seeds, you planted a seed with that person, if they, it's on them to make it grow, right? If you've planted it with a full and loving heart, and that's a message that I got from our shul, from the daily email, and it changed my life. So I'm really grateful for that one, because especially in the work that I do, I can't make anybody change. Thank God I learned that a really long time ago. But some people are really struggling, and you just have to be where they are in the struggle to help them to get there where they want to be or where they need to be. But I can't schlep them along. I have to be where they are. So we have to be where the person is in their loneliness, even if that's the only place that they are.
That's an awesome message. I think you as a professional understand that, but people who don't have the professional training that you do, we don't, it's not, we want to see results. We want to see, I called someone, or I brought them over a container of soup for Shabbos, or I brought them over a cake, whatever it was, and they're not responding to me. But your insight tells us that we have to be there for them where they are, and therefore our expectations will be more realistic in what, and therefore we won't be disappointed. The bottom line is that we should be encouraged to continue to move on and continue to engage with them, and not to take my own feeling of, and I'm not even going to call it an ego. It's not, because it's a normal thing. I've done something, I want to be recognized for it. But when we're coming to them, like you said, it's beautiful. I think this is a huge piece. If I'm coming to them where they are, then whatever their response is, I can reflect on it in relationship to where they are. Maybe from their standpoint of where they are in their emotional strength, they put a smile on their face when they got a smile on their face when they saw my cake. And that's big. That could be big for them where they are. So please, all of us, let's take that message in addition to all the other ones. But I think that's so important, because as non-professionals, we don't, I think, me personally, don't have that insight. But I think I want to thank you very, very, it's an awesome thing. It's a piece of your professionalism that we can gain from an experience of talking with you. So let me go on to one thing. Even if we don't do our best, some days we aren't up to our best, but yet we keep on trying. We keep on moving forward. Do you have a comment to make on that comment?
Yeah. So I've become a really big fan of, I'm going to say it this way, I've become a really big fan of Brené Brown's really solid research about human dynamics. And I read her book this year, Rising Strong. I think it was in Rising Strong. I've read a couple of her books during Corona, and they've really changed my life. But one of the things that she wrote about in one of her books was the idea of, are we doing our best? Are we doing the best we can? And I remember for years, I would say to people, I remember sitting in my office in Australia saying to people, you're doing the best you can. And someone, somewhere, somehow, like, said something to me that like made me doubt that idea. And then I read Brené Brown's conversation with someone in her book who, she asked her friend, do you think we do the best we can? And she said, no way. Nobody's doing the best they can. Like, look, not everybody's doing the best they can. Look at all the mothers who aren't breastfeeding their kids, and they're giving them bottles, and they're just like, they're giving up, and they're doing such horrible things to their kids and filling their kids with soy and hormones and this and that. And both of them were young mothers, and Brené wasn't nursing, and this friend was. And this woman stomped on Brené's heart and didn't realize it with her judgmentalism. And she, at that point, realized it's a choice of perspective. It is hard as to believe that everybody is doing the best they can at that moment. But what other choice do I have? It's not the best that you can at that moment does not necessarily mean that it's the best you can do ever, but pretty much you're doing the best you can at every moment. Does not mean that you've arrived. It doesn't mean that you're complacent. It doesn't mean any of those things, but it does mean that you have to choose. It's done the cuff scores, giving the benefit of the doubt. How can you choose to believe anything else? Because we are all Hashem's creatures. How could we not be trying our best?
Fantastic perspective. Fantastic perspective. And someone commented, that just happened to me. I am puzzled why they don't reply after I dropped off a meal. So now the person says, I don't feel so bad now, because it's in that perspective of coming down to where they are, putting myself in their shoes, and relating to the person from where they are. I think that's a huge, huge message, in addition to all the other huge messages. As I said before, that's a piece that we don't often get to, we don't think about. I think it's your professionalism and your training that gives you that perspective. And you really need to do that every day in your private practice, because you work hard for people, and sometimes it might take them a long while to come along, but you've come to them where they are, and you can watch them take their baby steps. And that's where we really are for the other person in our lives, wherever we are. Now, someone said, do you compare yourself to others?
I was so hoping that I was going to get a chance to say the next thing that I really want to say, because we're dancing around it, but we're not saying it. I have to give a Satov to Rebbe Dina Garari in Australia, because she did a Chavas Levavos class, which changed my life. And even if it just changed my life with this one thing, and I think that, like, I know I'm connecting to whoever's here, and cameras on or not, I feel a connection to all of you. And that's true because Hashem has made neurons in our brains where we're connected to each other. For example, if you're sitting on the bus with a mask and you're just absent-mindedly staring at someone and they look over, why? Because our mirror neurons are resonating with their mirror neurons in their brain. When someone says, I was thinking of you, and you call them, right? That's our mirror neurons across the world. It's the coolest thing. But on the other hand, what's actually going on is that, say, someone doesn't say thank you for the meal that I drop off. I could think it's about them. But really what the Chavos Levavos says is that it's about me. It's about me and my relationship to Hashem. And that person who didn't say thank you, it's between them and their relationship to Hashem. They're just an agent. That experience that they gave me of not saying thank you is for me to figure out between me and Hashem, what does that mean to me? So you can think it's about this way horizontally, but it's this way. And it's always that way. And so it doesn't, and Baruch Hashem, lots of times it's really good when it's this way with people in our lives. But whenever it's hard, we know it's a lesson. When it's good and when it's hard, it has to help to keep us growing between us and Hashem. Say that
again.
When it's good and when it's hard, it has to be between us and Hashem.
There's always that element of between us and Hashem in every interaction that we have. And that's such a huge, huge message. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you, Chaya. Thank you for coming. And we will, Chaya, we will, Emir Hashem, have you again for another Chodesh Tov.
Mirz Hashem with Mashiach.
Amen.
Pleasure.
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov, everybody.